HR is doing so much and being so busy, like we're doing a lot, and yet leadership is not listening. Have you found yourself in this situation as a human resource professional, as a human resource leader, or even a business leader, finding out that every time you're at the seat at the table, you get ignored, nobody's listening to you, you give suggestions, and they seem to have no value? Hey, if you find yourself in this situation, then today's class is for you. Because today we're going to analyze the HR mistake that makes leadership ignore you. Yes, those things you're doing wrong that makes leadership ignore you when you are speaking or trying to influence decisions. And the reasons why most HR not only lose their influence, but how you can fix the loss of this influence. So we're going to move you from being ignored to be influential. So you're welcome to Virtual Pro 360 Academy, where we help you to move your leadership and business game to the next level. First of all, let's look at the real problem here. HR is not ignored because it lacks value. No, HR does have value, but how do you make that value seen? Because it fails to communicate value in business terms. And if you dig deep, you'll find out that most times leadership ignores you because you're unable to actually interpret the value of your decisions and how it adds to the bottom line. Now, the HR language typically is activities, activities, and activities. Training, hiring, policies, recruitment, compensation and benefits, blah, blah, blah. Now, when it comes to the aspect of leadership language, a leadership listens for. Now, this is what leadership wants to hear. They want to hear you talk about revenue generation. They want to hear you talk about cost, right? How to make sure you're not spending too much because they see you more as a cost center than a revenue generating center. Of course, they also want to hear you talk about the risk, talent retention, cost reduction, anything that adds positively to the bottom line in terms of currency. All right. So if leadership cannot see that impact, they otherwise assume there is none, zilch, zero, nada, no impact. And these are the things we want to. So let's take a look at the critical mistake. The mistakes that kills HR influence. Process only, which focuses on what was done, versus business impact, which focuses on what has changed. Now, if you focus on process only instead of business outcomes, you're going to be sounding very boring during leadership meetings. And trust me, you definitely will not get enough time to explain yourself. Now, when you're reporting what was done instead of what changed, definitely you're going to get the kind of response you have always been getting. Now, when you speak about measuring effort, that is a no-no. You should be looking at the impact of the effort and not just the effort alone. It has to be something that is measurable. It has to be something that is data proven, something that gives them the numbers. Leadership is always concerned about the numbers. Now, instead of emphasizing on compliance as a human resource practitioner, which we always do, we should talk about the contribution to the business and how this compliance saves money, saves cost, of course, as usual, in the currencies that they understand. Let's take, for example, a normal HR language will be we hired 20 people. But the proper leadership language or what leadership is listening for or want to hear is we reduce revenue loss by filling critical roles. Okay, so instead of you focusing on activities, focus on impact. Instead of focusing on reports, focus on results. And instead of focusing on compliance, you should focus on value created. Now, let's be honest. Leadership is thinking basically on how to make more money. And these are the three things they actually care about. So please sit tight and pay attention, right? So the core framework of leadership is actually interested in is number one, revenue growth, drive growth and create value. So you have to ask yourself as a business leader, as a human resource practitioner, how does my strategic business unit drive growth and create value? Remember the numbers. Number two, cost efficiency. Optimize your resources and reduce waste. Of course, you should still be able to interpret the data of how much you're able to optimize the resources and, of course, reduce waste. Now, number three is risk and sustainability. Protect the business and ensure continuity. So from the outside conversation, all right, you need to put yourself to the center of the business decisions, which will end up earning you a seat at the strategic table. Once your conversations can move from the other side and move to the right language, which is the revenue growth, which is the cost efficiency, and of course, risk sustainability, then you will definitely have the ears and the mind of leadership. Now, the rule is every HR conversation must link to at least one of these. And of course, sit pretty if you can do the three. Now, one statement you need to have at the top of your mind is if it doesn't affect money or risk, it doesn't get attention. Now, here's how to fix it. I call this the 3C model, how to make a leadership listen to you. Number one, connect. Link to a business problem. Find out that business problem that you know your department, of course, in this case, HR, can solve. Two, convert. Translate into measurable impact. Remember, know the numbers, have the data, do your research. And of course, it moves to number three, communicate. You have to learn how to speak the language. Deliver in clear, concise business language, right? An example flow is basically attrition is high. No, the right language is attrition is reducing sales performance by 50%. Remember the numbers, right? Connect, convert, and communicate. Once you can master the 3C model, then you're on your way to getting a seat at the strategic table, and of course, getting what you need to get done for the organization. That is simply getting the ears and heart of leadership and moving from being ignored to influential and a business decision maker. Of course, a strategic partner as well of the organization. So before we need training, after is skill gaps are costing us X or Y amount in lost productivity, or employees are leaving, as against turnover is increasing, replacement cost by X or Y Z amount, right? So here's the checklist. Before speaking, ask yourself, what business problem am I solving? Number two, what is the measurable impact? Number three, which of the three, that is revenue, cost, and risk, does this affect? Right? So HR earns influence when it speaks the language of business. And of course, as usual, this is Virtual Pro 360 Academy, where we help you take you to the next level in your career, leadership, and of course, knowing how to manage situations in the workplace environment. And if you enjoyed this session, please don't forget to subscribe, and we'll see you in the next class.